Welcome to Sports Beat KC, a sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and kansascity.com. On today's show, we talk with Brooke Pryor and Sam Mellinger about the Chiefs draft. The Chiefs took 6 players in the NFL draft this year, but the conversation was about more than the players that they drafted. Later in the show, we talk with Missouri beat writer Alex Schiffer about his experiences covering the NFL draft in Nashville and Drew Lock, the Missouri quarterback who was taken in the second round. In many years, we would have dived right into the players that the Chiefs selected, but there were a couple of sort of other stories that involved other Chiefs players that will delay our entry right into the draft. 2 of those, one of which is Frank Clark. They traded out of the first round for Frank Clark, and so the Chiefs didn't have a first-round pick. They started on the second round. The other, of course, is Tyreek Hill, which dominated the conversation in Kansas City over the weekend. So while 31 other teams spent the weekend talking exclusively about the draft, those of us in Kansas City spent a lot of the time discussing Tyreek Hill. And Brooke, I know this was your first NFL draft.
From this side of things,
From this side, right? As a beat writer, NFL beat writer. So I think it was probably a little bit of an unusual experience for you.
But I hear that the food was just as good this time as it usually is at the facility.
Man, was it ever.
We're thankful for that. But it was interesting because my favorite line of the weekend came from Pete Sweeney over at Arrowhead Pride. He said, "This weekend, it feels like having a funeral during Christmas at the Chiefs," which was the best way that I've heard it described. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like, the rest of the league is pumped about all the guys that they're adding. The Chiefs, of course, are adding guys, but then there's also this Tyreek Hill thing that is overshadowing all of it. And every move they're making, this is in the backdrop.
And I don't think, Sam, that the timing of the Tyreek Hill news was planned for the draft weekend. It's just how it happened to fall. But it fell at a time when the Chiefs or any team would want to spend the whole weekend talking about their future, and the Chiefs have to include in their future one possibly without Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I mean, the audio tape was released by KCTV5 basically in response to Steve Howe's, the Johnson County DA's decision to not press charges.
That happened on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And the KCTV tape was released on Thursday, which was the day of the first round.
About an hour before the first round started, it aired. It was the top of the 6 o'clock news. Draft started at 7.
So unless Steve Howe, for some reason that I can't think of right now, scheduled that press conference because it was the day before.
Steve Howe, secret Raiders fan. Let's start that rumor going.
That part of it was a coincidence. But yeah, I mean, it hung over everything. And then they trade up for a short, absurdly fast receiver with some return skills, and
what a weird coincidence.
I know what they said, right? That had nothing to do with it, but
that's what Andy Reid said right out of the gate.
I don't think anybody believes that, and I'll tell you this: I don't think Andy Reid expects anybody to believe that.
Right. It felt like something that he just had to say. The quote was, "This is someone Brett had his eye on from the get-go. It doesn't have anything to do with the things going on right now. It's just a player he's felt good about, and the way the board fell, he was right there in a position to do that."
And we're talking about McCole Hardman, the first player that they selected, which was in the second round, who, as you described, Sam, has many of the attributes and characteristics, physical characteristics of Tyreek Hill.
And just to be clear, I believe the first part of that quote from Andy, that this is a guy that Brett Veach had his eye on. I believe that.
Sure.
And I believe the second part, that the way that the board fell and blah, 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 blah. I do not believe the middle part, that this had nothing to do with, the Tyreek Hill news. I find it very hard to believe that they'd have traded up for a short, fast guy if they had Tyreek Hill. I think maybe they try later in the draft to find a short, fast guy,
right,
or whatever. I do, because I do believe that that they wanted some wide receiver depth. I absolutely believe that.
And that's something that really took a hit during free agency with Chris Conley, DeAnthony Thomas, his injury and situation. I don't think with the team any longer. They didn't re-sign him. But yeah, they absolutely needed that guy. But I agree with you that they wouldn't have wasted that pick. It's not a waste, but they wouldn't have used it on that when they have so many other positions of need that they could have addressed that high up.
But he did give himself a little cover by being able to say that they traded up for the pick, right? They traded up they went up 5 spots because they thought, I taking a guess here, they thought the Jets may have been interested.
Right, and that's from what I've heard, that's right, that the Jets were also after McCole Hardman, and they were going to try to make a play for that number 56 pick. And that's what, when we talked to Brett Veach, he alluded to something like that happening, and he didn't tell us the team, but
we're just guessing here.
Right, and we've seen a couple of reports out of New York that's the case. But Brett Veach said, we weren't necessarily worried about a team that had a pick before us getting McCole Hardman, but we were worried that a team was going to trade up to kind of leapfrog us. So that's why they decided to deal their 5th-round pick to go up 5 spots.
The thought on many national analysts and then locally was that the Chiefs would go defense with their first pick, knowing that they weren't going to be in the first round, knowing they weren't going to pick until 61, which was their original first pick in the second round, first pick in their draft. And we thought cornerback is the biggest position of need. When the corners, there was only one taken in the first round. Only one, DeAndre Baker was the only cornerback taken in the first round. But then they came off the board really quickly in the second round. I mean, like 4 of the first 8 and maybe something like that. 6 of the first 14 were cornerbacks taken. The Chiefs still hadn't picked. Now, I think the Chiefs could have traded up, could have traded picks to get up and move into the first 10 picks somewhere in the second round. And if they really liked one of those cornerbacks, it was also a draft where the reputation of the cornerbacks this was not a good draft for corners. I mean, thus they fell into the second round.
Right. And when the second round started, 2 guys immediately came off the board, Byron Murphy and Rock Ya-Sin, who I think were some guys the Chiefs were really, really interested in. And then 4 picks after that, Sean Bunting from Central Michigan came off the board.
Who the Chiefs have identified as somebody I think we thought they were interested in.
Yeah, those top 3 guys were all guys that they, I think, really wanted, but they would have had to give up a lot to move up to that spot. So I think that's why they just kind of passed on the corners. And Joanne Williams, corner from Vanderbilt, went with the 45th overall pick to the Patriots. He was another guy the Chiefs liked. But yeah, I mean, I think that they saw the board wasn't falling in their way as far as corners go in that second round, and that's, I think, also contributed to McCole Hardman kind of moving up on their board.
Okay, so they get Hardman, who from Georgia, got speed. I remember watching him catch an 80-yard touchdown pass in the the college football championship game a couple years ago. I can never remember the
CFP.
initial CFP. Thank you very much, as opposed to the BCS.
Yeah.
Right? But
whatever that game is called now.
Yeah. Against in the Georgia or the Mercedes-Benz Stadium against Alabama, he caught 2 touchdowns in that game. He was pretty impressive, and his speed is obvious. So. We talked to Brett Veach earlier today, and he was the guy that identified as somebody who they think Chiefs going to help the Chiefs immediately. Could see him on the field right away. Wasn't going to speak for the coaches, but
right. But he, in his opinion, he'll be out there soon. Which, in my mind, and maybe we're reading too much into this here, but hearing I expect to see him play a lot in Week 1 is another sign to me that Tyreek Hill's not going to be on this team.
It probably is. I think if you take somebody that high, they better play.
Well, that's right.
That's right. They better play, and he really is. It's a weird thing. He's not as fast as Tyreek Hill, I don't think, but he's so fast. Like, I mean, if you watch his tape, like some of these snaps, there's plays where it looks like not only the defender has a possible angle, but an easy angle, and he just zooms right by him. It's pretty remarkable. There are some things that he needs to learn. Like if this is the comparison that we're going to go with, and it probably should be, he's really raw. And when you're a receiver at Georgia,
right, that's the point I was going to make.
Yeah, you don't get used that much.
You don't. I mean, they've turned out some decent receivers. I mean, Julio Jones came out of that program, so they've had some good ones. But it's not Chris Conley came out of Georgia,
right?
But that's not what the SEC often is about. There've been good wide receivers, good skill players, quarterbacks, whatnot. But it's a defense and running game league. But it's the best too. I mean. when you're drafting and signing a player out of that conference, and Georgia's been at the top of the SEC now for the last few years, you're the closest to the NFL when you're playing in that scenario, right? So even though his stats weren't wild, right? He was 30 something receptions last year, 500 and something yards. Wasn't an All-America. I don't think he was even first team All-SEC, anything like that. But his measurables are terrific. He's guys like this are typically NFL ready.
It's all like sort of what you hear anyway. It's subtleties with him. He's got to work on his breaks. Like it's little things like he takes too many steps in breaks. It's these side adjustments, which is you're supposed to run one route, but depending on how the safety's playing, you do a different one. It's stuff like that. But I think they feel like he's a smart kid. Just mentally he's advanced, so he can pick up that stuff, you would think, pretty easily. Now, like one thing, and again, if you watch, and I'm not pretending that I've watched like all of his tape or anything, but I have watched some.
What have you been doing, Sam?
Yeah, and he had a really nice contested, sort of back shoulder catch for a touchdown, I think against LSU, but don't quote me on that. But there's other plays where contested catches are tough for him. You know what I mean? And look, like that's why they're contested catches, right? They should be tough. But that's sort of, again, if we're going to go with this comparison, Tyreek Hill was incredible in those situations.
I still think about that catch from earlier this year where he caught it and was like hit at the same time. Was that the Chargers game? I think.
Yeah, week one.
Yeah, week one. Yeah. He had some of those incredible catches that
his hands were the least talked about, but most impressive thing about Tyreek Hill was great hands.
Yeah, and there's a gap there with Hardman. He's got to. He's got to improve that.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was the case with Hill in his first year either.
I remember, I don't remember drops ever being a problem with him. No. I remember just like right away. The biggest problem with him was just he would sort of curve routes.
Yeah, it was the route running.
And but the ball tracking and the hands, I mean, he was like right away, ooh, they might have something. And I think some of that like side adjustment stuff that we were just talking about with Hardman was probably something that Tyreek had to work on as well. But it's a nice there's a lot of potential there, and it's sort of a nice starter kit, for a really nice weapon, especially in that offense.
Yeah, but we're also looking at possibly, Sammy Watkins and Demarcus Robinson being the top two guys right now.
Yep.
And that's fine. I mean that's probably average, NFL average.
Yeah,
right?
but it's not what last year's.
It's not.
Was.
I mean, you throw Kelsey in as a pass catching tight end, the guy who caught 103 balls last year.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a difference maker for sure at his position.
Sammy Watkins is a good 2, a bad 1.
Yeah, that's right.
If he's healthy.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem here is
Demarcus Robinson, a good 3, a bad 2.
Yep.
Right. But I mean, look, I think there's a lot of talent in Demarcus Robinson. I think he could be a guy whose production jumps quite a bit from last year. I keep thinking about the which game? It was a home game. He got the long 88-yarder. Do you remember this?
I do.
Yeah.
And I forgot which game that was. It was late in the season.
Was that Patrick's 80 or 50th touchdown?
It may have been. Yeah.
You're right. I think that is.
I think that was his one. Yeah.
And I just remember talking to them in the locker room after that game, and that was not the route he was supposed to run. And I can't remember if he was supposed to come back or break it off or whatever, but he had the guy beat. And he and Patrick, sort of locked eyes. He puts his arm up. Patrick knows what that means. He goes deep. It's an 88-yard touchdown. Like that's the kind of stuff. If you can get more of that from Demarcus Robinson, he can be a really good player. But sort of look, he had been the 3,
right?
And that's better than if he's your 2.
Okay, let's move on. And with the Chiefs had another second-round pick and took Juan Thornhill, the defensive back from the University of Virginia. I kind of think I kind of like this pick as much as any of the picks.
Yeah, I think I graded this one an A or an A+ when I did my draft grades yesterday because he's a really versatile guy, which versatile is, Lord, if there's ever been a word used more often. But I mean, it works really well with this team because it's true. They did go for all kind of versatile guys across the board, and Juan Thornhill fits right in there. He's a guy that they can see using in a lot of different positions, but as as Veach and I think as Andy Reid also said, he gives them a true center fielder free safety that allows Tyrann Mathieu to play strong safety, which Tyrann Mathieu said in his opening introductory press conference, he feels like Superman the closer he gets to the ball. That allows him to do that, put Juan at free safety, but you can also switch it up. So I think he's the perfect complementary piece next to or playing with Tyrann Mathieu.
Well, I think with the drafting of Thornhill and what I've heard about him and what I've seen, along with the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, that position has been upgraded as much as any. The safety position has been upgraded as much as any that the Chiefs had, and had the furthest to go when it comes to upgrading.
I was just gonna say, that position was a train wreck last year, and I'm not going to pretend that I cover the other 31 close enough to say this definitively, but I can't imagine that there are too many teams with any position group as bad as the Chiefs' safety group was last year.
I think that was mostly responsible for their 31st ranking of total defense. The safety position.
It affected everything that they did. That group was just horrendous. And now it's been remade into potentially a strength. And those two guys are not just, especially Mathieu. Again, it's easy, when you focus on one team, you kind of lose track of how good other players are. But that guy's a stud, and he makes plays everywhere. And he can play sort of linebacker. He can blitz. He can do so much. And Thornhill's not just a good player in his own right from what we can see, right? You never know how that translates.
You're not playing top competition at Virginia.
Yeah, but... So it's not just two good players, but it's a really good pairing because it allows Mathieu to be closer to the line of scrimmage and be more of that playmaking threat that the Chiefs really haven't had, without Marcus Peters and without Eric Berry.
Yeah, and since a healthy Eric Berry at that position.
Yeah, and Thornhill is a good compliment with the E, not the I, in that of being able to cover ground and being, sort of that classic center fielder type. Some of the stuff, I'm not comparing these two players, but some of the reasons that the Chiefs were really aggressive in trying to get Earl Thomas, both in a trade and in free agency, is because of his skill set that Juan Thornhill has. I'm not, again, poor man's version or whatever, but that's sort of, I think, what they're looking at. It goes from, again, the worst position group on the team to potentially a strength.
Okay, and so the personality award for the draft goes to their third-round pick, Colin Sanders, who was we saw Phil as soon as they drafted him. Of course, we always do. We go right to the social media to check out this guy, and we saw the film of him doing backflips. This is a guy who I was texting one of my friends who is a NFL writer, and she was with me at the Senior Bowl, and we saw Colin Sanders there, and she did a story on him, and I told her, I was like, you know what? I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I know everybody was doing stories on him, but I specifically didn't invest a lot in getting close to him and getting stories on him then, because I was like, I just know I'm going to get a draft crush on this guy, and there's no way the Chiefs are going to be able to take him, and I'm just going to get my hopes up, and it's going to be for no reason. And so when he gets drafted, I was like, yes, this guy, not only does he do backflips, he is 6'2", somewhere in there. 6'2", 325, something like that. Yeah, 325, was a running back in high school, totally here for that. His daughter was born, he was having to debate with his fiance, now wife. She was supposed to be, I think, the week after the Senior Bowl, and she went into labor when he was in Mobile, and he was like, should I come back? And she was like, no, you need to stay here because eventually you're going to have to provide for your daughter. And so you went to Western Illinois. You don't have a ton of tape. You need to be here so people can get to know you. And she was born while he was in Mobile, and I think he saw the birth via FaceTime. But everything about this guy, the story is great. His his conference call with us after he was drafted was great. I think I asked him if he did a backflip, or maybe you asked him if he did a backflip after he got picked up, and he said, no, I was holding my daughter, so I didn't think that would be safe. Which, what a great, just good answer, easygoing guy, and I think that he's going to, personality fit-wise, work great with the Chiefs, and B, I think he's going to be a part of this core nucleus of this defensive line, and Steve Spagnuolo's kind of trademark
just the rotation that they use on that defensive line. They keep coming, and you get him with Derek Nottie. And I think that you get a really strong defensive front that doesn't have many weaknesses.
A rotation. They're going to have a rotation there, and they're also going to have maybe a little bit of competition about who gets to line up in the backfield occasionally. Yeah. We have seen over the years. Well, actually, we only saw it with really only one player, really, in the Andy Reid era with Dontari Poe.
Yeah.
Chris Jones has been jonesing for that responsibility since he's
Blair.
been there, but Colin Saunders has been in the end zone as lining up at fullback for Western Illinois.
There's only one other team that I would like to see him with in that regard, and that'd be Chicago with Matt Nagy's kind of the defensive specials that he'll go pull a defensive guy out of the room and have him working on a trick play, but I think that Andy Reid could do that with Colin Saunders, and please, I'm so here for that.
But I mean, Dontari Poe. First of all, I looked it up. It was against the Raiders, DeMarcus Robinson's,
which was the regular season finale.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But Dontari Poe, let's respect what he did with the Chiefs because he lined up.
It was amazing.
He lined up wide. Yes. He lined up in
Put
the
him
backfield.
in motion.
Yeah. He was the Wildcat quarterback. Those are big shoes to fill.
Who could forget his jump pass against the Broncos on Christmas night? That was unbelievable.
I'm so sad I missed this.
Oh yeah, you should be. You should be. I mean,
I feel it.
I wrote remember when the Raiders game when he caught the hungry pig right?
Oh yeah.
And I mean that column was just a love letter to that play. I just wrote 1,000 words on that.
I'll never forget you coming back up to the press box. You were just kind of you were floating. You were
floating.
floating.
I was like, I found out the play call.
That was classic.
I was so happy.
But I do think in Colin Saunders, the Chiefs might, Chris Jones has been asking to do this, but he didn't play any of this position in college.
Yep.
Saunders did. We might see him incorporated in a little bit of offensive.
Yes.
In the playbook a little bit.
And also, Chris Jones is a tremendous athlete at that size. But Saunders, there's a clip, I think it was Seth Kaiser tweeted out this clip of Saunders lining up basically as an edge rusher. Did you see this?
No.
As an edge rusher, no hand in the dirt, just standing up like he's D Ford or something. And he get and look, it's Western Illinois. I don't know what team he was playing, whatever. But he gets the left tackle with an inside move, with a fake outside, plants inside, explodes, and gets a sack. There's some legitimate, as the football people might say, there's some legitimate wiggle.
Yes,
in his game.
That was a phrase I saw about him, which I'm here for it also.
And listen, if you're 325 and wiggling, that's an advantage.
And not just jiggling, wiggling greater than jiggling here.
Okay, so let's go through the final three picks kind of quickly here. In the sixth round, of course, the Chiefs
had a lot of time to wait.
Oh my
gosh,
gosh,
a lot
on
of time
Saturday.
to kill.
So yeah, it's rounds 4 through 7 on Saturday, and the Chiefs didn't pick until late in the sixth. I think someone counted 4.5 hours.
Yep.
From the time the
was a
draft
long
started
time.
until the
Of
Chiefs
course they
picked.
counted.
Right. So Rashad Fenton, the cornerback from South Carolina. Sam, how are they going to use him, do you think?
Well, he's fast, right? And he's got some ability there. You know that if a guy that fast at a premium position is available in the sixth round, there's a reason. Who also played, in the SEC.
SEC, right?
So there's a reason he was still available, some rawness and that kind of thing. But that's a position that they had to get, right, for depth. I think if you're looking at the draft sort of overall, corner is probably the position that got shortchanged. Somebody had to get shortchanged, right? And in this situation, it was probably corner. If they can get something out of him, obviously that helps it. But I would assume that that's a bit of a project.
Okay. Also in the sixth round, running back Darwin Thompson from Utah State. Interesting background for him.
He's rocked up, by the way. I don't know if you've heard. He's a rocked up guy.
Yes, rocked up because he's 5'8", 200 pounds, and 1 year of FBS football at Utah State. He was in junior college for 3 years. He redshirted once as a freshman, played 2 years at Northeast Oklahoma, A&M at Miami, Oklahoma, and then told us on the conference call afterwards that he didn't think he would, there was no reason for him to come back for a fifth year of college. He's probably right. Chiefs seem pretty excited about him for a sixth round pick.
Yeah, I think the thing that's really intriguing about Darwin Thompson is that he's different from the backs that they have in that room right now. Right now we all know Brett Veach has a type. It's running backs that are like 6 feet tall, 220 pounds, can do a little bit of everything. Darwin Thompson is 5'8", like 200 pounds, I think. So he's a big dude. He's just compact. And he's kind of like a bigger version of a scat back. And I think that they like him, that he can be this change of pace guy. And I think that he's going to have a real shot to make the team. There's going to be some competition, as Brett Veach said today on the conference call, for that last couple roster spots. But he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a playmaker. He can run through contact. I think they like a lot of things about him. And I mean, there's a lot to like. I think he's going to be really fun to kind of watch. I think what the comp today was Dion Lewis. I've seen some other comps, Tariq Cohen, but Tariq Cohen's smaller. He seems like he's a bigger version of Tariq Cohen.
I know we talked to the scout, the area scout who scouted him on after the pick was made, and someone suggested Darren Sproles. Sproles is actually a little bit smaller than the 5. Sproles might be like 5'6.5" or something. Darwin Thompson's 5'8". Okay, in the 7th round, Nick Allegretti, the offensive lineman from Illinois, who is clearly one of the most interesting people in the draft.
I'm so excited about this guy.
Oh my gosh! So I'll set it up a little bit. Got his graduated in December of 17 from Illinois. Got his master's in December of 18 while he continued to play for the Illini. Hobbies include puzzles, Rubik's cubes,
coin collecting,
and he's a coin collector.
Which is in his Twitter bio. He uses like what the actual word is. Is it pneumatist? Something like that.
Show off.
You know what? When we're in the 7th round, please God, give me something interesting to write about. It's numismatist.
Say it again.
Numismatist.
Say it twice.
Nope.
Fast.
Nope.
Okay.
Why don't you, Sam?
Yeah, you'll be learning to spell it though soon.
Yeah, right.
Like next week.
I mean, I've been tripping over spelling his last name. A2LLEGRETTI.
Yeah.
So I have to like remember. It's 2 L's, 2 T's, 1 G. Because I keep wanting to do double all the letters.
So love the background. Chiefs went into the draft, I think, looking for an offensive lineman. He played guard and center, and I think guard will be his first look with the Chiefs. But going back to Brooke's favorite word, versatility. That's what all the offensive linemen the Chiefs have. Play multiple positions. That's how it is in the NFL anymore anyway. Yep. With the exception possibly of the tackles. I mean, the guards and centers are interchangeable. So. Nick Allegretti, interesting guy. We'll talk to him this weekend. And of the undrafted free agents, which that's a sport unto itself. Right after the draft, right, the Chiefs ended up signing another, as all teams do, another 15 to 20 guys afterwards. Anybody
I think they were
there?
At 19 when I counted last night.
Who are the most interesting names there?
They've got some good names back there. Darius, was it Harris? Darius Harris, linebacker. Gary Johnson, linebacker out of Texas.
Second team All Big 12 last
year.
Yep.
Mark Fields, cornerback from Clemson. John Lovett. His last name's Lovett, and I know a person named John Lovett, and now I'm hoping that it's the same person.
You know an actor named John Lovett.
Yes, I know him very well. An athlete out of Princeton. He was all Ivy League. I think he was the Ivy League quarterback of the year, player of the year.
Maybe,
but but they like the idea of using him as a hybrid H-back, fullback, somewhere in there. Something like what Trey Burton was used as. I'm trying to think who else.
That could be like that potential tight end depth a little bit that they've been chasing for a long time.
We thought they might draft one. They ended up not drafting a tight end.
Yeah, well, I mean, tight end was definitely a position of need and that they had a high priority on, but I just think that there was no one that really, like, the pick matched the value.
Right.
The only other name that you didn't mention, that you named the big ones, but it's James, right? I know his last name's Williams because he's a Chiefs running back, but out of Washington State, I think
running back,
there might be a little bit of potential there.
Mm-hmm.
And Shermer, the Vanderbilt quarterback, 4-year starter at Vanderbilt, who's the son of the New York Giants coach. He's there for depth.
He's there to get dirt on the Chiefs, and then he's going to go give it back to his dad. So
that's what it is.
Just kidding. Let's not put that out there. I'm sure Brett Veach is listening to this and is all of a sudden like, "Oh man, we really screwed up. Sorry, you can't come here."
So coming up for the Chiefs, rookie minicamp starting Saturday, and then a series of the OTAs. Whenever it changes from, maybe this is when it changes from phase 1 to phase 2. We were into the phases last time we talked. And I don't know how many phases there are, but
too many.
Yeah, but the phases continue into June, by the way.
Oh, they sure do through June 13th. That's the last day of OTAs.
Many of the phases that we're
the last day of mandatory minicamp, I think.
Yeah, that's what it is. So.
Whatever, we'll be there.
All right, Brooke Pryor and Sam Mellinger, thanks for breaking down the Chiefs draft with us today. Hey, it's Blair Kerkhoff, and if you're listening to this, you love Kansas City sports, whether it's the Chiefs, Royals, Sporting, Mizzou, KU, or K-State. And no one covers these teams like the Kansas City Star. If you currently subscribe to the paper or have a digital subscription, thank you for your support. And if you don't, here's a great offer. It's called Sports Pass, unlimited digital access to every sports story and video on kansascity.com. And it's just $30 for the first year. It's the best sports value in town, just 8 cents a day or $2.50 a month. You can't beat that. Subscribe now at kansascity.com/sportspass. We're joined by Alex Schiffer, beat writer, covers Mizzou for the Kansas City Star and kansascity.com, and in the rarest of sightings, Alex has joined us in studio today. Alex, how you doing?
Good. I was about to say the same thing. Rare in-studio appearance for me.
Yeah, I guess
Big
we can.
deal.
We can count on this about once every 3 months or so. But we are so fortunate to have you here, and we sure enjoy talking to you in studio. And you're here today, fresh off of covering the NFL draft on site in Nashville. You were there to chronicle the doings of Drew Lock, Emmanuel Hall, any other Mizzou players that might have been drafted. And as it turns out, I think I overheard you say this earlier. The stories that you anticipated doing didn't quite turn out the way that you thought. But that always turns from a sports writer's perspective. Sometimes that's just better, right? But let's start with what you went down to do. What did you anticipate with Drew Lock, and what happened?
So the original game plan was going to be in bed with Drew a bit on Wednesday, cover the first round Thursday. Drew goes in the first round. Spend the second night with Emmanuel Hall, who was projected to go maybe in the 50s, then late, third round. And then spend the last day with Paul Adams, the offensive lineman, who maybe he got drafted in the late rounds, but likely a free agent. I thought it'd be a cool story of, how does a free agent go about learning their destination? And got there Wednesday around 1:30. Didn't really hear anything from the Lock camp all Wednesday. Meet with the Locks mid-Thursday morning, or I guess around Thursday afternoon around 1 p.m. Get great stuff. Go to the draft. We've been in Nashville. You think about the amount of times you have to go to Nashville for the Mizzou beat. Vanderbilt for both basketball and football. SEC tournament. NCAA tournament for Mizzou last year. I think I've eaten at every place there is to eat. I don't even need directions anymore when going around the city. And so then Drew doesn't go Thursday, so that completely throws a monkey wrench into everything.
It changes a lot of things, really, about the quarterback, the quarterbacks in the draft. So let's pause there, and then we'll pick up the others. So Drew Lock doesn't go in the first round. I think you'll agree with me that for the quarterbacks, the draft took an interesting turn at pick number 6.
Completely.
So what happens at pick 6?
The Giants take Daniel Jones from Duke, not to be confused with the former Tribune beat writer, Danny Jones, as we have a lot of fun with the Mizzou beat. 3 official NFL Twitter handles tagged Daniel Jones, the beat writer, instead of Daniel Jones, the Twitter. We were all having fun with it. So the Giants took Daniel Jones at 6, and then Dwayne Haskins went at 15. Obviously, Kyler Murray went at number 1. And then, so Thursday night ends without Drew Lock getting selected.
We thought after Haskins was picked at 15 by the Redskins that the Giants had their quarterback already at 16, so the Broncos at 20 would be the next best landing spot for Locke. And I'm sorry, am I right about that?
Yes.
So, but then there were a couple other spots after that where it could have happened. It didn't happen for Drew Lock in the first round.
Yeah, and to touch on some of those, I really thought the Chargers had a chance to take him at 28. Ken Wisenhunt, the OC, was at Missouri's Pro Day. Phillip Rivers worked out with Drew with Jordan Palmer when they were out in California. And I thought that was the best. I made a list the other day of ideal landing spots. I had the Chargers number 1 because they have a young offense between Mike Williams, Hunter Harvey at tight end, Melvin Gordon. He'd be the young quarterback to kind of build around all those guys with. Phillip Rivers, I think, had a very identical college career to Drew Lock. He put up big numbers at a school that doesn't really have a ton of national attention for football in terms of NC State,
right?
Your neck of the woods. And someone told me that Phillip Rivers didn't beat a lot of ranked teams or deliver in big games a lot the way.
Correct.
So I thought it'd be a perfect fit, and they didn't. But I think the counter argument is, and this is kind of the same thing with the Chiefs, why would you take a building block when you're a play or two away from the Super Bowl? Obviously, the Chargers got blown out by New England, but when you're in the playoffs, why are you looking to the future?
They think they're close.
Exactly. So I thought the Chargers would have been a good fit. New England for obvious reasons. Even Green Bay. But I think they're another team that a couple good players and free agent signings. They're back in the playoffs next year. So yeah, it was tough for me to kind of have a story ready because you just kept thinking, all right, well, Broncos at 20, the Raiders had 2 picks. That was another one. John Gruden really liked Drew Lock from the time of the Senior Bowl. And then the Chargers and the Patriots. So I kept adjusting the gun I had written of like, Lock enters a situation where he'll sit behind Phillip Rivers. Instead, now Tom Brady, the defending champs. So
right.
So it was tough to really write him off completely, even going to those last few picks, because it's like, well, all those teams have older quarterbacks without an heir apparent.
So we did believe that the Broncos, if we had a pie graph of potential Drew Lock landing spots, the Broncos probably had the largest slice of the pie. We thought it would be in the first round. Turns out it's in the second round. Mm-hmm. And so he goes to Denver. He poses with Elway. He poses with his number 19 jersey. That's where Drew Lock lands. But as it turns out, he is not going to be the quarterback for the Broncos next year. That's been established. Joe Flacco is the Broncos quarterback. What do you think his evolution will be in Denver? How long before he becomes the starter?
I think it's going to be very interesting. We were talking about this a little earlier around here, but Joe Flacco wasn't the most helpful guy to Lamar Jackson when he got taken last year by the Ravens. I think this is a very interesting situation for Drew Lock. I mean, he's played his entire career. He's never sat the bench really for anything. 4-year starter at Lee Summit, was the number 2 behind Matty Mock that got a series or 2 every game for 3 or 4 games. And then he was essentially a 4-year starter in my eyes at Missouri. This is going to be the first time, maybe ever, that he's not the guy. So I think a lot of it's going to hinge on what Flacco does for him as a mentor. He's never really had one before. And, what do the Broncos do on offense to build around him? There's a familiar face there in the center, Connor McGovern, who was on the line with, who blocked for Drew Lock as a freshman. They traded, I'm going to screw up one of them and not the other. Emmanuel Sanders is the one they traded to Houston. So Demaryius Thomas is still there, so that's a reliable veteran he has. But this is a team that's more known for its defense with guys like Von Miller. So I think it's going to be interesting to kind of see if Drew Lock's the quarterback for the future. How do they go about putting young pieces around him down the line? I think he'll sit for a year or two. I don't see him sitting for more than that.
So you're right. The Broncos are known for their defense, terrific defense, Von Miller-led defense, and not developing quarterbacks. Since Peyton Manning led them to the Super Bowl 50 victory, they've drafted Brock Osweiler, Paxton Lynch. Neither of them obviously turned out to be the quarterback of the future in Denver. So I think if Missouri fans who now follow the Broncos and Drew Lock have a little bit of concern, it's the Broncos' inability to develop a quarterback in their organization.
Interesting stat I looked up. By the way, side note, I had thought Paxton Lynch was still in the Broncos roster. Imagine Barry Odom's situation. He helped recruit Paxton Lynch to Memphis and then would have had both backup quarterbacks be personal ties to him. You mentioned Brock Osweiler. It's a weird history with second-round quarterbacks taken. I don't know if you saw my tweet, but Derek Carr is a second-round quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo, Geno Smith, Christian Hackenberg from my hometown Jets. I mentioned Drew. It's really a mixed bag, and then you also have I'm gonna see if I could pull it up, but it's a really mixed bag of quarterbacks taken in the second round. There's no guy you really point to and says like this is a second round. Obviously Tom Brady was in the sixth. 199 pick. Russell Wilson was a third round pick. But if you look at the second round guys, it's very much there's not really a guy you point to and say, well, this guy came out of the second round. That's a good sign. It's some dumpster fires. I would put Jimmy Garoppolo in the category of kind of undetermined.
Right, but seems to have a promising future.
Yes.
The 49ers certainly invested in him before he was injured at Arrowhead last year.
Yes, here's the full list. Quarterbacks taken the second round of the draft since 2011. DeShone Kizer, now the Green Bay Packers backup, but disastrous with the Browns. Hackenberg, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Osweiler, Geno Smith. Here we go. Colin Kaepernick and Andy Dalton.
Okay.
So those are two guys that.
But you got to go back a little ways.
Exactly. So it's more about the fit necessarily, but it just struck me that that the range of failure to success, you get it all in the second round.
All right. So before we let you go, Alex, I wanted to ask you also about your NFL draft scene observations because Nashville was awarded this draft and Las Vegas next year in a bid process that Kansas City was involved in. Kansas City and Cleveland, along with Nashville and Las Vegas, were the four cities that bid for the destinations that went to Nashville and Vegas. So Kansas City still interested in holding the draft here in downtown Kansas City at some point. First year it becomes available would be 2021. Kansas City officials are hoping to get it sometime in the next 4 or 5 years. Chief CEO Clark Hunt said as much over the weekend during the NFL draft. I just want to know what you saw. I know you were there to cover Missouri, Drew Lock and Missouri players, but you were in the middle of it as well. Everything I read was very positive about how Nashville handled it and maybe set a new bar for city excitement and civic pride over this thing. Just give me some of your general observations of Nashville.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how wide the range of fans were that I saw. I saw a ton of 49ers fans. I saw a ton of Arizona Cardinals fans. I probably could have found you a group of each fan from each team. And I don't, I know certain fan bases, but I don't, I couldn't point out to you which one would say, well, they're a team they're a fan base that would follow their team to the draft or something like that, and I agree. I thought it was very well handled. The thing that struck me again, because you cover so many events on this beat from Bridgestone, there was a lot of accessible parking that like $30 for 4 hours, which I think is not a bad deal, 2 or 3 blocks from the stage that you had plenty of options for. I was very, very impressed with that. I thought the NFL did a great job. I was on the set of Good Morning Football. Personal buddy of mine's a producer, Emmanuel Hall, was on. I was embedded with him as we discussed. They had a great crowd for Tootsie's. They did another show from another rooftop bar, and they had a lot of cool. Obviously, that makes for a lot of good scenes, a lot of good ways for fans to kind of you go to the bar and get a drink, and now you're watching them talk football. There was a lot of that, so I thought it was very well handled. Again, I was thinking the whole time when you guys were telling me to take pictures and see videos and everything, how to look in Kansas City. I thought what made the arrangement in Nashville work so well is they had a ton of stuff going on at Nissan Stadium, and obviously you take that pedestrian bridge right over, and you land right into Broadway. So there was a great way they had a ton of. You parked your car at the stadium too if you wanted for the draft. They had a ton of stuff there at the stadium. The NFL experience. They had a couple games for kids, and then you walk over to Broadway and you got the actual stage. You have the stages for the different shows the networks were doing. You had all the bars. You had Bridgestone. They had this giant arch as you kind of walked into the whole thing of the NFL experience. Said who's on the clock. They had live highlights of everything. I thought it was very well done in all those senses, but I also just kind of thought the geography kind of helped them out. I was asking myself, would the plaza work for that, or would that cause too many traffic issues given everything going on there? Would power and light be better? Seems like Arrowhead's too far out from all the main stuff here for there to be like some kind of thing there. So I was kind of wondering if it were to go to KC, just what's the best spot for it to be here?
I think the idea, if and when it comes to Kansas City, is to put the stage, sort of the grand stage at Union Station, and then have fans, basically work their way up toward Liberty Memorial, which is, if you remember the Royal Celebration Parade, that's where the parade ended. That's where the royal stage was, where the players had their celebration with the fans after motoring down Grand Avenue. And then you had the, however many hundreds of thousands of fans sitting on the grass on the way up to Liberty Memorial. So I think that's the working plan for Kansas City. We'll see if that comes to fruition. They do have other options, and it sounded like Nashville used a lot more than just Broadway for this, and that's sort of the idea, and that's what it's become when you bring 100 to 200,000 visitors into your town. I would think there'd be no other sporting or any other attraction like this where so many people come from out of town. I think I saw a survey when it was in Philadelphia 2 years ago. A post-draft survey had 65% of the people who were there came from out of town, which 60,000 or 60% or 65% of a couple 100,000 is a lot of dollars being dropped in your restaurants and hotels.
Yes, I'd love to see what the number is for what Nashville did in money from all this. And what blew my mind too is that I was only down there the first 2 days, but you couldn't pay me. I get asked a lot being from the New York area. Have you ever been to watch the ball drop New Year's Eve?
Times Square.
And I said no, and I don't want to get too gross, but I've had friends that have gone. These are grown men. These are our age, Blair, and they'll wear diapers because you have no public restroom access for a very long time. And I couldn't believe all these people. You get to walk from, there's a media tent set up, and then that's to the left of the stage if you're looking directly where Roger Goodell would come out. And then there's the red carpet kind of buried a little back. The red carpet was probably the coolest thing because you get to interview all the prospects whenever you want. It's open season. But all the people that were jam-packed right in front of the stage on the second and third day for rounds 2 through 7, they don't even announce all those picks at the podium.
Right.
And they don't even, some of the, I thought they kind of could have cut when you're watching the draft at someone else's house and you just want to keep moving. They had all these guys doing the fan chants and everything, but I just thought it was crazy. I get round 1, I thought there'd be a huge drop off. Like, it was pretty consistent for attendance the second and third day, and that I would have lost money if I put a bet on that.
Interesting. Well, on that imagery, we will bid you farewell, Alex, and thank you so much for coming in and sharing some thoughts, and we will talk to you again soon.
Yes, this was fun.
Links to the stories that we discussed today can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. I don't say this enough, but I want to thank Kathy Liu, our producer, and Leah Becerra, our technical advisor, and she does just about everything else for this podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again soon.